Yeah, so it's and astrology to me it's endlessly fascinating because it's really the study of cycles, and cycles don't begin or end; they just continue. And so when we're looking at what happened in 2020, it didn't just start in 2020. I mean, there's the lead up, and we're still experiencing, as we all know, the repercussions of what was going on. But astrologically, it was an astounding year. Just to look at and we're going to look at the key players in 2020. The key players have been, first of all, we'll talk about cycles. We have long and very long cycles, like precession of the equinoxes, which is like 2,000 years or so. We talk about the age of Pisces, the age coming into the age of Aquarius. So that's a very long cycle, but there are other cycles that are also fairly long. And one of the key players in our talk today is Pluto. His cycle is 248 years. So that's how long it takes him to go one journey through all 12 signs. So the last time Pluto was in Capricorn, which is where it is right now, was in at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So that was a kickoff for that. It was also still in Capricorn when the United States of America was born. So they are coming up to their first Pluto return, which we humans don't get that, but countries do. So we can see they're in for a huge change there. Right? Pluto is the planet.
Oh, I was just going to ask you to give us a little information about that, what that means when Pluto is in Capricorn.
Yeah, well, Pluto is the planet of death and regeneration. It is the planet of life, really, because it is, like I say, death and regeneration. That is the beginning and the alpha omega, right? It is the outermost planet that we know about, even though the astronomers demoted him a few years ago. I don't think Pluto was too thrilled with that. Maybe he's getting his revenge. But, so he is transformative. He transforms things. And in mythology, he was the lord of the underworld. So deep, dark stuff. That's where wealth is. And the word plutocrat comes from Pluto. So when we're talking about plutocrats, we are talking about those people who are somewhat hidden. We don't see them. And, they have a lot of power. Pluto had power, because he was in that place of, the underworld where that's where the wealth is, right? It's deep in the earth. So Pluto is, we see him as power. We see him as transformative, right? But transformation is, ultimately it can be just the total sweeping away of what you had and let's start over. So, again, it's cycles on cycles. And in Capricorn as a sign has to do with structures. Okay, in the body, it's the bones, hard parts of the body that hold you together. And Capricorn is social structures. It's one of the, it's a sign that has to do with our social structures and what we build. It's an earth sign, so it's very much about material stuff. You can imagine that the Pluto, the root word of plutocrat, is in the sign of material stuff and social structures. So that's kind of what we've been seeing, right? We have been seeing more and more, the plutocrats getting more and more wealthy and more powerful, and so maybe they've gone far enough with that. We hope. So that's that's one of the longer cycles. Pluto's cycle is longer. So he came into Capricorn in 2008. You might remember 2008 was, a big crash, bailing out the big banks. That's all very Capricornian stuff. Capricorn, is like the corporate world, right? And so that's what's been controlling so much of our lives for a long time, has been that, well, industry and corporations and all of that stuff that began with the Industrial Revolution. I'm sure there was lots going on before that and the previous Pluto cycles. But yeah, this one has been, it kicked off with the big crash, all the banks needing bailouts in 2008. And it's kind of not been great since then, really. So anyways, and then we have the next player in the mix is Saturn. Now, Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. It's got a lot in common with the sign Capricorn. He likes structure. I mean, at his best, he is disciplined. But, you know, he can also be control, you know, and restrictions and limitations. And, you know, and we're seeing a lot of control going on right now, especially from the plutocrats. So, yeah, they've been working together. So Saturn came into his own sign at the end of 2017 for a brief bit, and then he came back full force in March of this year. And so we've got this Saturn coming in. He, you know, Pluto was near the end of Capricorn, so Saturn didn't meet up with him right away. And when we have two planets coming together, I mean, if you think about the planets, they are energies, right? Everything is energy. So everything has frequencies. But when we talk about the qualities of the signs or the qualities of the planets, we're talking about specific types of frequencies and energies. So you can imagine when you have an energy like Pluto, with its power and all of that that's associated with it. And then you have Capricorn come in there with its association with control and limitation and discipline and so, and the material aspect of things. That's a powerful combination. So then we have, you know, we've had those two in moving through Capricorn. In the past year, also, actually, since the end of November of 2018, we've had another cycle, which is the lunar nodes. So the moon has its nodes, and the nodes are important because that's the point on the ecliptic, and the ecliptic is the apparent path of the planets around us. When the sun, moon, and earth are in alignment, they're near the nodes. Okay, because the nodes are that point where sun and moon's paths cross in relation to us on the earth. So we've had the nodes of the moon going through Capricorn, Cancer, okay, and the south node of the moon, which is kind of interpreted usually as kind of what we've had and what needs to kind of be let go of so we can move forward. Has been in Capricorn. This year has seen, you know, we've seen a lot of cycles ending and beginning, because when planets come together, they're starting a new cycle between the two of them, right? So it's been cycles and cycles and cycles this year, ending and getting ready to begin something new. So we can see why there's been so much coming to a head, I think, you know, in the last year. The universe seems to have said, yes, 2020 is the year, bang, because it's all come together. And as I say, the alignments we've had have been absolutely extraordinary. And I'm going to get into that a little more. Just introducing the cast of characters.
Oh, I love it. Would you like me to share any of the screens, or are you just going to let me know when to do that, Jill?
I'll let you know. Yeah.
Okay,
we'll
thank you.
Just a
Thank
second.
you.
So the third player in this that's really important is Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's cycle, Saturn's cycle is about 28 to 30 years. So that's how long it takes Saturn to go through the whole circle. So it does meet up with Pluto about every, 30 years or so, but, not the way it did this year. And Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. So again, it comes around. it actually meets up with Saturn about every 20 years. So this is the beginning of a new 20-year Saturn cycle. But again, it's because of the year it is and the way the universe works, it has been an extraordinary cycle for those two planets too. I'm going to talk about that. So Jupiter came into Capricorn at the end of 2019, and then it was in all through 2020, right up till the end. So those are our cast of characters. We've had Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter all coming into Capricorn, and at the same time we've had the moon's south node in there as well in the mix. So the first event of 2020, from a celestial perspective, astrologically speaking, was the eclipse on the 10th of January, and you've got that as the first chart. And we'll just have a brief look at that. There it is. And if you look at it, you can see there's kind of a little collection at the top of that chart, and that's in the sign of Capricorn. Now, this chart is set up without specific houses, because it's basically the chart of the world. And so it's got 0 Aries on the eastern horizon, 0 Capricorn overhead, 0 Cancer at the bottom, and 0 Libra on the other. Those are the cardinal points when we have spring, summer, fall, and winter, right? So they are significant points. So when we look at something like just a global picture, I think it's best to look at it from this perspective. So, but we're looking at the specific time of that lunar eclipse. And a lunar eclipse is a full moon, right? But not every full moon is an eclipse. As I say, they only happen when they line up with the nodes. So down at the bottom of the chart, you can see the moon in Cancer. And just to the left of it, you'll see that little squiggly line, and that's the north node. I didn't put the south node in because the 10th house was packed enough. And the south node is always exactly opposite the north. So they are poles apart. But at the north end, you can see that Jupiter is just 1 degree away from that south node. And already it's starting to play this tag game with all the points. But key point there is you've got the sun and Mercury right together, opposite the moon. And right beside them, you've got Saturn at 2233. Now, the numbers mean the degrees of the sign. So signs are divided into 30 degrees, and each degree has 60 minutes, like hours. So that means that Saturn is at 22 degrees and 33 minutes of Capricorn. Well, Pluto's only at 22 degrees and 42 minutes. So they're very close. They're heading for their exact conjunction. So when you hear people talking about, the spectacular star that we had on solstice, the Jupiter-Saturn, we're talking about that exact moment. But they are very close together for a lot longer than just that one day. Okay, so, and the same with slow planets like Saturn and Pluto. They were playing tag a lot this year, just be within inches of each other, kind of. So that means that this particular lunar eclipse, you had all of that packed energy. Like I say, these planets represent energy, frequency, right? You've got all of those frequencies within 2 degrees of each other and pulling on the moon, right? So we were feeling it already, right, in January, right? Something was happening, and it didn't just start in January, as I say. This is when it came to a head, because if you go to the next one, you will see that things shift a little bit. So if you go to the next slide, number 2.
Oops.
That's okay.
There we go.
Yep. Not seeing number 2 yet.
Saturn Pluto conjunction number 2, January 12th.
Yeah, I'm still seeing lunar eclipse number 1.
Oh,
Me too.
that's strange. Just see if are you still seeing the same one?
Yeah.
There's something going on with my, because I'm seeing like it's moving along for me, so
Oh,
I'm not sure what's going on here. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second.
okay.
Sorry, guys.
It happens. You're better at this than I am.
I don't know about that. Okay, I'm just going to pull and see what's going on. So we're looking for the second one, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's see if this will do it for me.
Yep. That's the one.
Great.
There we are. So you can see that the planets are still pretty tightly packed up there. You've still got Jupiter and the Sun and Pluto and Saturn and Mercury, but they've rearranged themselves slightly because Mercury moves fairly quickly, right? So does the Sun, but Saturn and Pluto don't. They just inch their way along. But you can see now they are exactly at the same, not only degree, but minute. So that's what we call an exact conjunction. But you could see from the first slide that they were pretty darn near to being exact. But that's because that eclipse was 2 days before these guys made their perfect conjunction. So again, that sort of highlights the significance of this year to me, because it's like, okay, we're in January and bang, we've got this eclipse, it's conjunct these 2 heavyweights, and we're in for a year, guys. You know, it's sort of like the universe saying, don't settle in too comfortably because stuff's going on here. So yeah, so we've got kind of a Saturn Pluto sandwich there with the Sun on one side and Mercury on the other. But again, you can just see that things shift as with time, right? The moon moves very quickly. It's already gone from Cancer into Leo down. It's in house number 5 on this chart. So it's no longer playing with those guys up at the top of the chart. It's not opposite them anymore. So things
Can
are.
I just ask something for clarification? So when you talk about the houses, it's the numbers that are circling the center of the.
That's right. The inner ring there, that just gives you the houses that in the flat chart, house number 1 is always Aries, house number 2 is always Taurus, because they have an association, right? And
okay, thank you.
House number 10 is always Capricorn. And again, in a personal chart, the 10th house is career. It's where I want to be in the world. So again, it goes with that whole thing of the social structures and society out there, not the personal stuff tends to be under the horizon. And then the public is out there, right? So that's kind of how one way to look at this. So yeah, it's kind of up there at the top of the world saying, ooh, we're important up here. Yeah. Pay attention. And as I say, because it is, Capricorn is the last of the earth signs. It's got one of the qualities of Capricorn is there's a certain amount of rigidity to it, right? It likes tradition. It likes to keep things the way they've always been. You know, we're going to hang on to this. So I think we have these plutocrats and others who really like the way things are. It's working really well for them. So they're going to want to hang on to it. They want to control and hang on and keep their wealth and keep us all where we are because it's working for them.
Is it also a paternal or even paternalistic?
Absolutely. Saturn is father time. He's, in the mythology, he was an earthy titan, but he he was kind of a tough guy. The mythology of these planets is always interesting to me too. Saturn's father was Uranus, the sky god. Okay, and Uranus, his wife was Gaia, so it was like the heavens lying with the earth, right? It's kind of like a creation myth in a way. But the children that Uranus got with Gaia were very earthy, and because Uranus was a heavenly character, he found them offensive. They were too gross and ugly and heavy, and he didn't like them, so he stuffed them back in when they were born. And anybody who's had children would understand why Gaia took exception to that. So eventually she got kind of fed up and she asked for help. And Saturn, who was one of her last children, said, "I'll help you, Mom," being responsibility being one of the qualities of Saturn. So he stepped forward and Gaia armed him with the sickle, the scythe that we see with Father Time, right? And so the next time Uranus came along to be with Gaia, he lopped off his genitals with the scythe. Of course, the scythe is shaped like a crescent moon as well, so it is the symbol of the mother, right? I love mythology. It's so rich with meaning. And it does add very much, I think, to our understanding of astrology. So Saturn, then took over. He kind of took away Uranus's power and took over as the chief god. Well, he was married and had children, and remembering what he did to his daddy, he was a little concerned about what his children might do. So he didn't shove them back in, but what he did was he would swallow each one when it was born. Again, you can imagine his wife was none too pleased. So with their last child, which was Jupiter, the mother had Jupiter. She wrapped a rock in a blanket and handed that to Saturn to eat, and got Jupiter taken away to an island to be raised by the nymphs so he could be okay. So of course he came back and overthrew Saturn. So, in terms of the symbolism of that, when we have Jupiter coming each 20 years or so to overtake Saturn, in a sense, from a mythological perspective, yes, it's like he's overthrowing him because he will move ahead faster than Saturn. He's got a shorter cycle. So again, and Pluto happens to be Jupiter's brother. So it's a family affair. And the other
sounds like where soap operas originated.
Yeah. I mean, read the myths. They leave soap operas in the dust when it comes to stuff going on. But the other thing about the nodes is that the north node, I mean, the south node, like I say, is stuff that, is familiar and needs to kind of, it might be time expiry date for it. The north node is where we need to be going, right? It's where we need to move to. And it's in Cancer in this, for the first eclipse and also still with this, and was through 2019. And Cancer is about nurturing and nourishment. And, it is the symbol of motherhood and, that motherly instinct and family. So to me, it feels like that's where we need to go. We need to bring back sort of more of a sense of the family of man, right? As humanity as a family rather than as cogs in the wheel of industry, right? So I think, to me, symbolically, that's kind of what this is about. That all of this stuff in Capricorn, because we've got the ending of all these cycles going on there, and the starting of something new. It's like, this isn't working so good anymore. Maybe we need to try a different strategy here. So anyway, that's where we're going with this. So this was the first big conjunction of the year. It was Saturn and Pluto, and that they are two heavyweight guys. They are, power and control, and they're in the sign, and they're in Saturn's sign of Capricorn, where he's comfortable, he's at home. So he likes being there, playing with Pluto and power, and works for him. Control and power go together really well. So that's all good. But then we can move ahead to the next slide as we go through the year here. We go from January, and that started off our year. That was January. Boom. So by April, we notice now there's a shift going on here. At the top of the chart, you've still got a couple of planets in Capricorn. You've got Jupiter and Pluto, and that's their first conjunction. Now, sometimes the planets do one conjunction and they're done. And that's what happened with Saturn and Pluto. Came together, said hi, had their meeting, and then Saturn, you can see, has moved into the next sign of Aquarius. It's sitting there with Mars when Jupiter and Pluto come together. So, but take note of the degree here, 24 degrees of Capricorn, which is actually where there was an eclipse at that degree in 2019, in July of 2019. So that was kind of like a precursor to, it's kind of like these degrees get plucked like a string on a guitar, And so they're vibrating, and then you get another point come along and activate it again. And so that's kind of what we will see here. It's like these degrees kind of pop up again and again. So this is the first of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions. They did 3 little meetings during 2020. So Jupiter has a very different energy from Saturn. His energy is, well, he was an Olympian. Okay, he wasn't an earthy god like Saturn. He was an Olympian. He ruled from, again, we're kind of going from the heavens with Uranus down to the earth. With Saturn, we're back up onto the top of the mountain, way up there in the clouds. That's where Jupiter lived. And, he had his thunderbolt and all the rest of it. He's more of an airy, fiery god. So he's coming along. The spirit of Jupiter is expansiveness. One of the epithets for Jupiter is Jove, where we get jovial, okay, which is very different from being Saturnine, which is serious Saturn stuff, right? Saturn's very serious. It's all business. And Jupiter is, he likes to explore and look what's over there. And, it's all about philosophy and religion and travel and expanding horizons. Okay, so we've got Saturn being the spirit, the essence of constriction and limitation, putting it in the box, right? And Jupiter says, yeah, let's get out of the box because the box is too limiting. We don't want these limitations. We want to expand things, grow, expand, explore. So very different energy, like poles apart. And this is the first conjunction. It was in April. And always significant when they come together. And you'll notice Mars is kind of getting into the action here. He's sitting there he's right beside Saturn there at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So they're close to an exact conjunction as well. He's already been conjunct. He's moved ahead. So yeah, so that again, I'm only picking out these characters. We could look at all the others, but that would take for too long. And really, these are the key players of the whole year. So that was April. We go ahead again to the next chart. If we can. Oh, well done.
Hey.
Yeah. And now we're in June, but the planets have turned retrograde. You see the little R beside them with the line through it? That means they're retrograde. And you see that R next to the planet. It means they're retrograde. Actually, you can see down at the bottom of the chart, Mercury in Cancer is also retrograde, the sun, right? So again, we're in June, so we've got the sun in the opposite sign to Capricorn now. But again, they're at 24 degrees again. They've backed up and they're coming together once more. And Saturn is at 0 degrees Aquarius. Again, that's an important thing as we move forward. So this was the second of the series of 3. So to me, that was really interesting that Saturn and Pluto only came together once, and Jupiter and Pluto are plotting 3 times in there, talking about what's going on and what needs to happen. So I like to personalize.
Jill,
So,
I just have a sort of question about,
absolutely, please do, yeah.
Just because I was thinking, certainly we had a lot of rebellion and social upheaval. We had tons of, action, community action for Black Lives Matter, and so are these factors that influence that, because of that, the structures and sort of that top down imposition?
Absolutely. I mean, even before any of this was happening, there were huge riots going on in France. I mean, they were having protests every weekend for over a year in France. We didn't hear about it in the mainstream media. And again, there's a lot of control going on because the plutocrats own the media. Mm-hmm. We don't get the truth a lot of the time. Okay. One of the things Jupiter likes is truth. He's a seeker of truth, right? And when you got Saturn and Pluto working together, all they want is control. And so controlling the message can be a very good way of accomplishing that, right? Control the narrative, you're going to control the world. They know that. They've been working. Propaganda is a very Plutonian thing. You're doing, from under the table. That's underground stuff. So that's how you control things. You don't show your hand. You do it subtly and hope that people don't notice. So yes, and Pluto is the masses, and Jupiter wants freedom, right? Jupiter is freedom. Saturn is restriction. Jupiter says, no, we need to be free. The other thing that's been going on a lot, and probably if people aren't paying attention to alternative media, you won't know, is that a lot of people are getting into common law as opposed to the law under which we are governed, because we are governed under what's called admiralty law. It's the law of the sea. And like when they register your birth, you become basically a property of the state, because you'll notice your name is all in capitals, and that's not you as a living person of the land. That's you under admiralty law as a piece of cargo that got delivered, right? Brought into birth. The words are interesting. That's why we see in a court of law, prisoners are in the dock. So a lot of the languaging comes from that. So, but a lot of people are going back to common law, which is the natural law, the law of the land, which is, basically, yes, if you transgress against somebody and everybody agrees that that was a transgression, then we need to do something about that. But, we kind of know right from wrong. And anyway, so Jupiter is the spirit of the law. Saturn is the letter of the law. So Saturn is more all those, books and books of law that have been written under admiralty law, whereas Jupiter is more the common law. Let's bring it back to the people, right? And Pluto is the masses, right? So there's a huge tension going on there between the Saturnian and the Jupiterian ideals of what needs to happen here. Because, if you've been following anything, there's this great reset that's being proposed and pushed on us, essentially. And that's, Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, which is where all the plutocrats meet, right? They meet every year to decide how the rest of the world is going to live. If you don't think there's a power thing going on, there is. So Jupiter's coming along to say, well, yeah, but, we need to look at, humanity as, all of these people and what their beliefs and rights and freedoms are, right? So that there is that going on. Yes, I think there's a great deal of that. And there are a bunch of lawsuits that are going on over the measures that have been brought in by governments right now. So people aren't happy with government, that Capricornian structure thing that's been becoming more and more iron-fisted of late. And that's because of that Saturnian influence kicking in big time, saying, yeah, we got to hang on to this really, really hard. So yes, big change there in terms of that kind of energy. And yeah, there's been a lot of unrest, and we don't always see it in the mainstream media, but there's a lot of people out there not happy with what's going on and trying to change. Mm-hmm. So this isn't over. 2020 may be over, but the effects of this will linger for a while, because profound changes that these cycles signify are not light. The last time, actually, going back to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, the last time they were conjunct in Capricorn was in 1518, and that was like it was just after 2 months after Martin Luther nailed his theses to the door. And it was kind of the height of the first wave of European colonialism and of the slave trade and all of that. So again, when you look at that and you see, okay, we had that conjunction in Capricorn then in 1518, how does what's going on now relate to that? Okay. So again, colonialism. We still have colonialism, only it's industrial now. Right? We don't go plant a flag, but we industrialize different parts of the world and take them over that way. Right? So yeah, so that's, again, these things don't happen every day. You don't get this happening in that particular way, in that particular sign very often. Right? That's a long time ago, 1518. Mm-hmm. So this is a unique thing. And the last time we had Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in Capricorn all at once was in 1894 BCE. Okay? That's even longer time ago. That's like 4,000 years ago. That was the beginning of Babylonia. So, like I say, historically speaking, this is an amazing time. And even that conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, they weren't exactly all conjunct in Capricorn at the same time. Saturn actually shifted into Aquarius before Jupiter caught up. So this time, you can see that Saturn has shifted into Aquarius. But if you go to the next one, next slide. Yep. Then you can see that Saturn has moved back into Capricorn. They were retrograde, remember? So he's moved back to join the party. So they're very, this is the last of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions. But Saturn has joined them this time in Capricorn. He's not in Aquarius this time. He's in Capricorn with them. So again, it's like, yeah, we're going to end up this Capricornian thing here. Let's tie it up with a bow. Yeah. And as I say, that has not happened. The last time that even came close to happening was in 1894 BCE. So that's, 4,000 years is a long cycle, right? So Babylonia began in 1894 BCE. And that's basically where the earliest known sets of laws were created for regulating trade and settling disputes, right? Again, it's always about commerce and trade, and, it became in the current area more about industrial, that kind of stuff. Corporations. Yeah, so, and it was the precursor for the development of the Judaic, Christian and Islamic civilizations that emerged from the Middle East. So significant that this is what's going on right now in relation to that. I think we need, you can never look at any of this in isolation because, as I say, we've got all of these cycles ending and beginning. You've got Saturn and Pluto ending that last cycle for them, and Saturn will move ahead now and not come back and see Pluto till 30 years or more from now, but won't be in Capricorn next time. And Jupiter and Pluto are finishing up their cycle. And, that'll come around again, but again, not in Capricorn. And Jupiter and Saturn finishing up their cycle, which will run for another 20 years. But again, the next one won't be in Capricorn. So this is kind of significant in all of that. Very interesting stuff. Me. You guys find it interesting. I do. So those are the conjunctions that we had this year with Pluto, right? And so this one's direct, but Saturn had decided to come back into Capricorn, which is interesting how the heavens orchestrate these things, just to finish that up. So that was, like I say, that conjunction was more spectacular than the one back in 1894 BC. Makes it pretty big. The next one, the next chart we have, is the last one we're going to look at for last year. And it's the one you did your meditation on, and this was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Now, what's interesting here is that they are at 0 degrees of Aquarius. They're not in Capricorn anymore. So to me, I see that as very hopeful, because I wouldn't have been nearly as hopeful if they'd done it in Capricorn. Say, oh, not more of that, right? Didn't we have enough of that this year? But to me, it was kind of like a ray of light at the end of the year. And the fact that it happened on the day of the solstice, which is known to be the return of the light, to me, I think it's been a dark, heavy time. And Capricorn's a dark, heavy sign. Saturn's a dark, heavy guy. And Jupiter is much lighter. He's a fiery, airy god, not heavy. And he wants to expand things, lighten things up. He likes having fun. Have you noticed they're trying to stop us having fun? You're not allowed to sing. You're not allowed to get together. You're not allowed to have a party. That's very Saturnian, very Plutonian, not. So Jupiter wants to loosen things up and lighten things up. Yay to having fun, indeed, Chris.
Oh, sorry, Jill. I just, it's so the significance from going from like this Capricorn into Aquarius.
Yes, absolutely. And this is another cycle. So this is also very interesting because Jupiter and Saturn do this thing, which is, I forget what they call it, mutations, I think, where they have their conjunctions every 20 years, but the last, couple of 100 years or so, for the most part, I think we had some exceptions from 1980 on, but all of them were in Earth signs, okay? That's Taurus and Virgo and Capricorn, right? And that's a pattern, again, these are cycles, that's a pattern that they have. So you'll have all these 100, 200 years or so of Jupiter and Saturn doing their cycle in particular element. So they're just ending finally, because this is the first of the ones that they're not going to go back into Earth again for their conjunctions. So again, it's at the 0 degree mark of Aquarius. It's like the beginning of the sign, a shift from Capricorn to Aquarius. And it's moving from Earth to air. Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to come up for some air. Right? Because I feel like we've all been buried for a while here. And so to me, and Jupiter is like a lighter, airier God, right? And he's overtaken Saturn again. And in the mythology, he is the sun, S-O-N, he's the son of Saturn, but he becomes the sun. He becomes the king of the gods, right? So in a sense, he's a precursor to, what the Christian son, who is the son of God and, and the son of man. Um, and so, I think often religion does that. They take from the more pagan stuff and bring it forward. Um, and so it was the return of the sun, which is the solstice, and the return of the sun, S-O-N, of Saturn, coming back and saying, yeah, you're done, Dad. This is my hope. This is my hope. And Jupiter does want us to be hopeful. He wants us, he's hope and optimism and expansiveness and freedom. And I think everybody is feeling like we need some of that right now. And Aquarius.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about, because I love Aquarius. I'm all excited about to hear your
Yes.
Aquarius.
I am an Aquarian, so I like it.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yes. So Aquarius is now interesting because we have our modern interpretation of Aquarius because, of course, we live in a modern age, and it's often seen as technology and all of that kind of stuff. But they didn't have that in the olden days, and up until the discovery of Uranus, Saturn was actually the ruler of Aquarius. And, the ancients did that because they didn't have enough planets to go around. So they had to assign planets to more than one of the signs, right? And they did it from Cancer and Leo out. So you had Sun ruling Leo, Moon ruling Cancer, and then out either side of that, you have Mercury ruling Gemini because it's next in line. Ruling Gemini and Virgo, and then out to the next one you have Venus, and the next one in line ruling Taurus and Libra, and then you still have to carry on with the old planets if you don't have the modern ones, right? So then you go back into you've got Aries and Scorpio ruled by Mars in the old system. And Sagittarius and Pisces, both ruled by Jupiter. And then Capricorn and Aquarius ruled by Saturn, because Saturn was the outermost planet back in the day. The Magi were following the star. They were following, likely, a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And there was one in 7 BC, 80 BC, I think. Anyway, which may have been when Jesus was born. Who knows? But they didn't know anything about Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. These are modern planets, right? But Uranus was the first of those discovered. He's the next one out from Saturn. So it's the step beyond this, the earthiness. And, he was a sky god. He's an airy guy, right? And yeah, there's the modern interpretation of technology and all of that. And we, even before our modern technology, we've had our sense of inventiveness, right? Humans have always wanted to invent things, but we're not the only species to use tools. We've seen other species that use tools lots. So, but we've taken it to a whole new level, maybe a little too far. But Aquarius is also like, it's out it's going beyond just the social to the more global picture. To me, it's humanity, right? The symbol for Aquarius is a human being. He's called the water bearer, but he's not carrying water, carrying the stream of consciousness. Right? And to me, that's what needs to happen here is a shift in consciousness, right? Not a fourth industrial revolution, and not, all of us becoming data points in the Internet of Things, which is kind of what Klaus Schwab's wanting. That would be his great reset. I think we need a great awakening. And Uranus he's often called the Great Awakener. He shakes things up. And in this year that we're in now, once Saturn and Jupiter came into Aquarius, they are moving towards a square with Uranus in Taurus. Okay, you can see Uranus down in house number 2 there in this chart. He's at 6 degrees 7 of Taurus. And they're not exactly conjunct him yet, but going through this year, Jupiter will soon, I think the middle of this month, Jupiter will square Uranus. And Jupiter moves fairly quickly. He goes through a sign in about a year, so he's not going to linger. But Saturn and Uranus will be squaring each other 3 times during the year. So that's going to be the big thing this year, and that will be upheaval. Because Saturn's trying like mad to hold on to what he likes the old way. Uranus says, no, we need something new. Right? So I think we are in for, some bumps along the way, which nobody should be surprised at. We don't expect the old guard to give things up easily. But if we look at who those people are, George Soros and Klaus Schwab and all of these guys, I mean, they're in their 80s or 90s. They're really clinging on to this power and this wealth and that whole thing. I mean, they're not the only ones, and I don't know who's behind the scenes other than the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and those guys, because they've been in it for a long time. The people who control the money, right? So, I think, yes, one interpretation of Aquarius could be, okay, we're going to have all this technology, but I think what needs to happen, and I think that's why the nodes were in Cancer during that other stuff. They've backed up into Gemini Sag right now, but yes, we need communication, but we need to come together as humanity. We need that communication to work for us, not against us. And we need in-person communication, this is great that we can connect all over the world with this kind of technology. I'm all for that. But I'm also for getting together with friends and giving hugs and having that physical contact with human beings, because that is essential to who we are as human beings. And Uranus is in an earth sign. It's in the earthiest of the earth signs, which is Taurus. Yes, we need a new way of relating to the earth. We need to get back, my belief is, we need to get back into the fact that we are part of nature, because I think the source of problems that we have on this planet really go back to our separation from nature. Those of us doing body talk, no, there's no separation, right? We are all one, right? We know this, right? The separation is an illusion. And we need to come back to that recognition that we are one, not just with each other and with, but with the planet. The planet is us. The symbol for the earth in astrology is a circle with a square in the middle, with a cross in the middle. And that's what you look at when you look at an earth sign, chart. Because, it's interesting to me because astrology is a geocentric, it's earth-centered. Geo is earth, right? And if you rearrange the letters of geo, you get ego. Right? So we are the earth, right? And the earth is us. And so that's why the earth isn't in the chart. It is the chart, right? It is who we are. And we need to get back in touch with the fact that we are animals. Right? I love it when people say, oh, the humans and the animals. It's like, no, we are animals. We need to connect with nature, be in nature. And we're losing that, I think, through all our are focused on the importance of technology and industry and all of that. So, to me, I see this as hopeful. I don't think it's going to necessarily be an easy year coming up this year, because these guys aren't going to give up easily. And Pluto does not move into Aquarius fully until 2024, beginning of 2024. Okay, so I think we are well and truly getting into the age of Aquarius now. Now, when you've got the great ages lasting around 2,000 years, you don't just say, well, at 2 o'clock tomorrow morning it'll kick in. You know, it's a gradual process. But I think this conjunction in Aquarius is sort of a harbinger that, yeah, we are getting into a real Aquarian age. And I am hoping it is, you know, human understanding and connection and, you know, and humanity coming together and finding our connection to the earth again, to one another and to our roots. Right? So, any questions? That's a very quick spin through the last year.
Oh, it was great. It was fascinating. Yeah. So if you have,
Sorry, you cut out.
if you have questions, you can just going to bring everybody up. You can just hand up, and then we can unmute you so you can ask. Or it is, especially if you're not familiar with astrology and principles of astrology, it can be pretty.
Yeah, I hope I haven't overwhelmed people, because it is. I mean, it's my language, and it's not everybody's language.
It's also a very macro view, which for personally, like I actually like a macro view. I love the approach that you've taken. I mean, not to say that individual charts aren't, but as an Aquarius and considering what's actually happening astrologically, I think that there's something in looking at a macro view, because we really are looking at more of the collective consciousness. And
yes. Yeah, and especially because of the many cycles and the very long cycles that are involved. I mean, a 4,000-year cycle is a pretty long time. Have that conjunction in Capricorn, the three of them. So, yeah, I think it is a very. Last year was a time of major stuff going on. I mean, we kind of noticed it with what was going on the planet. I don't think I'm hoping people get more an appreciation from this of just how significant a year it was, not just for what was being done, but for what was happening celestially and, you know, the influences at work. Yeah. So does anybody have questions? Because I'm answering if I can. A lot to digest.
yeah, but very, very, very interesting.
What about you, Linda? Did you have any questions or anything you wanted to?
For me, it's also a lot to digest. Although I mean, it's just been really interesting in how you've been talking, when we're talking about these plutocracies and these large forces that, and with Pluto being really relatively hidden, you know, one of the things that I started to research was our monetary system in the last couple of years, because I was just kind of curious how money was created, who's controlling money, how money works, and all those things. And I had, as you can well imagine, when I dove into that, a lot of, oh, wow, I can't believe this is what happens.
Exactly. Well, and it's been so controlled for so many, hundreds, thousands of years. I mean,
but even the political structures and it just correlates. So it's like even how the Federal Reserve came to.
Absolutely. Yes. I've been looking at that too. It's all very Capricornian. It's very much, we're going to take.
Now that we're moving into this new cycle, to me, like I do feel hopeful.
Yeah. But there's reason to be concerned, and there's reason to really stand up for freedoms and all the rest of it, because Klaus Schwab and his cronies and all those billionaires that gather at Davos really, really do want their technocracy. That's what they're pushing right now, and you're going to be wired up like all the computers to the cloud. I don't think I want that, I don't know about you, but I don't mind using a computer if I want to do that, but I don't want to be wired up to something in my brain, having who knows who accessing and hacking in and telling me what to think, and or reading my thoughts or whatever because the technology that's available, the military have been working on so much stuff. We see very little of what they really have. Mm-hmm. And yes, they could definitely control everything, and you and me and everything else, through the technology, and that's what we do. Yeah.
But even what you talked about through COVID and through, all of the government rules and I'm not saying, it's like I'm not offering my opinion on whether it's necessary or not, right? Like I remain neutral in that because I respect people's fear. However, it's that type of control that has been facilitated by the nature of communications that we've moved into. And however, there's also a blessing in those communications, right? Because we wouldn't be able to do this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and again, you don't want to throw everything out. We want to make use of, we want what's useful to us. But, if you look at even, the manufacturing sector, well, how many of the things you buy do you really, really need, right? We are sold stuff because they, let's admit it, they've become really good at propaganda. They call it advertising, but propaganda is propaganda, and it's what controls, you enough to make you think, oh yeah, I think I really want to have that, whether you would have thought of it, or not.
And I mean, yes, I hear what you're saying, and this is a subservient or subservient hidden agenda, so that this is the Pluto type of energy that you're talking about, right? When we go back to that, because, and one of the things that I've been reading about, and it wasn't actually to learn how to brainwash people. So don't worry, everyone, I'm not trying to brainwash you with anything.
Me neither. I'm just trying to get behind what that is about.
I looked at how I wanted to understand how stories influenced us, and also why we as humans create stories. Like I was just looking at this, and to the point that how it actually impacts how our brains physiologically and chemically respond to this. So when I started my research on it, as soon as I started researching on it, the first and number of studies that came up with it, it was all about marketing and being able to actually know how to tell a story to be able to influence and manipulate people.
Right. Well, and governments have taken it to a whole new level. They have several different branches within each government on applied psychology and how to manipulate the public.
Manipulate people. Yeah.
It's, again, government is a Capricornian structure. Yeah. And what we need with this Pluto in Capricorn is for the structures to come tumbling down. All of them. They are not working they're not working in a way that's helpful to humanity.
Yeah, I wonder though, it's kind of interesting. And Jackie, did you have a question? Because I can see you over there, and we're getting into that. I better give some airtime to Jackie. Sorry, Jackie. I'm just going to put myself on mute.
I really resonate, and I like the explanation when you like seeing that the circles doesn't like, and is everything is a cycle. And yes. I always wondered before, like, it seems like what we are living now, it seems like if we live it, or not we, but it was lived before in so many, like the repetition of the things in a different era, but it's this, essentially, it seems to me that it's the same thing. So when you mentioned it about the 1984 BCE, I was like, wow, of course, very quickly, like, yeah, that everything, like you say, related. So that resonated a lot with me. And I was, it gives me more understanding of,
Sure,
of everything.
And ideally, we would learn from all of that, right? Rather than trying to keep it going and repeating what we've done before.
I think that's the thing, that are we really learning that from the past? Are we really learning now?
Yes. Because there's a lot of measures that are being brought in that are not, don't make any sense except to control people. And we've seen this kind of thing happen before, and it's not that long ago where, people were told what to think and how to behave, and, and so we need to be mindful of that, I think.
Yeah. The other thing in Netflix, there's, I think it's a documentary about how we had been controlled by the electronics and all that.
Yes.
And I want to see it with my husband, but we feel a little bit scared to know the truth.
Yes.
And like,
but
if you go
that's what will set us free. We need to look for the truth, because we're not going to get it through the mainstream media, because that's a method of control. We know who owns the mainstream media. Same 6 people own all the media in the world. So that's not going to give us truth. We need to go digging for it. And if you go online trying to do that these days, you'll find that there's a lot of it being censored. Again, trying to control. So yeah, we're kind of in a battle. I guess I see it in a way, the battle between light and dark that's going on. It's almost like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, the climax of the movie. And I think we're there, because I think in a sense it's a war on humanity, because they're wanting a transhumanist agenda here, a technocracy. And that means we're no longer really human anymore. And so I think we need to bring the human back into humanity, not take it out personally. And so that, I think, for that to happen, we all do need to stand up and say, no, this isn't okay to control everybody, to try and get us to do this that you want us to do. We need to have some free will here and some choice and freedom. That's my feeling about it. And I think that's what Jupiter is all about. They're saying, let's bring back freedom. Freedom of thought. Thank you. Anybody else have questions?
Because that's, the more we sort of discuss this, the more it helps us to really understand and how these big forces are really reflecting what's happening. But then also, in a sense, it's like, well, what have astrologers used astrology for, but to be able to, it's another tool of education and looking for potential for bettering ourselves.
Yeah, for me, it's always been I've always seen it as a healing tool, really. And on an individual basis, you get a deeper understanding of who you are. You can look at a chart and it's like you're stepping outside yourself to get a little more perspective, which I think is always helpful. Did somebody else have a question there?
Well, this was.
Could I ask a question, Jill?
Oh,
sure.
Great.
Yes.
So December 21st, when Jupiter and Saturn had the conjunction, it was a 6-1. Was that like almost the heaviest one? Like almost it was like us hitting a brick wall? Because there was a lot of people that really were affected by that, more so than what I had heard over the past year.
Well, I think it was a combination of things. It was, again, we're shifting from Capricorn into Aquarius, and it is that it was the winter solstice. That is a key time for us on the planet. That they mark. We observe the solstices and the equinoxes for a reason, because they're pivotal times. They're kind of like the shift times in going from one season to the next, right? So yeah, we're going into winter, which is a darker time for people. So to me, it was like, but you've got Jupiter and this bright light in the sky saying it's okay. We're going to get back to the light, So, but I think it's also daunting because things have been so dark and so heavy for so long. Like, can we really trust this? Can we really? And it's up to us as humanity to rise up and say, yeah, no, we're not going to let you control us anymore. Because if you look at it, the mass of people on the planet, there's 7.8 billion people on the planet. We don't need all of them rising up and standing together to take out a relative handful of plutocrats who are running things, which is why they're using us against each other. They're encouraging people to, snitch on their neighbors and police one another with all of the measures they brought in, because they can't control us all if we say, yeah, no, we are free human beings. We can make choices about this. You don't control it, right? So that in order to control that many people, they have to have tactics to do it. And that's what they are using. The divide and conquer has always worked for them, which is why we have to come together, right? And that's, to me, it does feel daunting, I think, and I feel hopeful, but then I can get pulled back into like, oh, it seems like it's too much, and we really pull this out. But I think we can, I think there are over 7 billion people to draw on. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of creativity, a lot of people coming together like this to talk and connect and say, and have, meditation groups and focus our attention on what we want, what kind of reawakening we want, rather than this great reset they have in mind. I don't know about you, but I don't think that's a good idea. So yeah, I hear you. I think a lot of people have felt discouraged and burnt out and overwhelmed, and yeah, it's was such a tough year. But I do think it, having that light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing, for me was like, okay, it doesn't feel like it yet, but I think that's telling us something.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, does that help?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And Jill, too, I think from a consciousness perspective as well.
Yes.
That when we're, the more we come together, one of the questions in that Shirley was asking, when's it going to end? Which is a great, when's it going to end? But I think that's, do we say when's it going to end, and who are we asking? Because ultimately the question comes to ourselves, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It only ends when we say enough.
Exactly. And also coming together like this and to shine a light on these perspectives on reality that feel, because of the greater sense of like the powers that be, so to speak.
Exactly.
But if we don't look at them and shine a light on them and illuminate them, then we stay, in a sense, in darkness and denial, right? So being able to discuss and become aware and use, your knowledge and wisdom to share this and bring more light.
Sure, and we need to realize, where do they get their power? They only get power if we give it to them.
That's right.
Right? Each of us has power. Each of us has Pluto in our chart, and Saturn, and all the rest of them. We are little universes unto ourselves. We don't recognize that. And that's part of this. What needs to happen is people need to recognize that, okay, I have individual power, but if I come together with other people, we're also saying, I don't like what's going on. And we stand up and say, no, we're not doing that. If enough of us do that, they cannot control us. There are not enough soldiers on the planet to control 7.8 billion people, right? Mm-hmm. They only have that power so long as we say, oh, the government has the power. The people have power.
May I share something that ties into this, I think? So where I live now, I live in a small town that is, we're close to the Anishinaabe First Nations Kirby Lake group.
Yep.
And so when I purchased my house, my lawyer, her last name was Waitung, and Waitungs I knew prior to going in are really like their name goes back a long time in the Kirby Lake First Nations.
Sure.
And so when I went in to speak with her, and it was Emily Waitung, and we were signing a deal, so it wasn't a lot of time for chit chat, TikTok on the clock. But I said, how are things going with the trees? And it was just interesting because we had a really short discourse. But then 2 years later, she ran and became the chief of Kirby Lake.
Oh, cool.
And why, to me, this is so significant when we're talking about these power dynamics is because here is this First Nations woman that studied land law.
Yeah.
And is now. So it's not necessarily dismantling the structures that be in a way that's like a revolutionary way, although it is revolutionary and it's almost subversive in its own way, because she's learning the structures that be in order to change them. And I just thought that was brilliant.
Absolutely. We need to understand. That's why I was mentioning the common law versus the admiralty law. People don't realize that. They don't have a clue. I mean, our parents didn't know that that's what they were doing when they registered our birth. They had no idea. We're not told. We're not asked for our consent. And this is going on a lot, right? A lot has been done without our consent. And that's something that's very big and very important right now. People keep mentioning the Nuremberg Code and informed consent. And we haven't had that in so many areas of our lives, not just in terms of medicine, but in other areas as well. That's important for all of us to have, to inform ourselves in order to understand how this game is played. Because it is a game and we don't know how, we weren't told the rules, right? The rulers make the rules up as they go along. And we don't get, we're told we don't have the power to decide. We elect them to decide for us. That's not working out well because they've been bought by the corporations because that, again, money rules the world, right? Mm-hmm. Money is not an evil thing. How it's been used is not a good thing. And that's what needs to change. Whatever medium of exchange we come up with, whether it's some form of actual money or something else, it needs to change how it's being handled and controlled and who's in charge and all that.
Yeah.
From my perspective, anyway. Yeah.
Well, so, fascinating.
Big stuff. Yeah.
Yes, big stuff indeed.
Absolutely. I think, Jupiter is understanding. Jupiter wants to know more. And it's in Aquarius, which is an air sign, which is information. It wants more information. We all need to inform ourselves more. We need to be looking. I don't understand the whole common law yet. I've been trying to learn more of it because you can stand under common law and you can, if somebody decides they're going to fine you for something, you can actually stand up to that using common law, but you have to understand the language because they will use the legal language that can entrap you. So there's lots of stuff to learn in that, and
lots of stuff, but not everyone has the opportunity to do that. And so I guess that's the wonderful thing about people that do, right?
And I think part of it is looking for, because of the wonders of the internet, the resources are there, but we have to
go. Jill, sorry, what I mean is that not everyone has the luxury of time to do that. A lot of people don't have the privilege of time to actually do that. And And so, I'm just sharing that with you because I think that sometimes people feel guilted out when they don't actually have the time to educate themselves on something, when in fact they just simply do not have the time to do it.
And I think
I like to take a balanced approach with that.
But that's where community comes into it, right?
Right.
Because in the community, there will be somebody who does know more,
Absolutely.
who can help with that, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we need to come together to work from our strengths together.
For sure.
And stand together with what each of us knows, because each of us knows a whole lot in different areas, right? So I don't have to know all that. If I know somebody who does, they can help me if I need it, right? It might help to know a little bit, but even if I don't, then I have somebody that I can call on. And I think we do. We need to, again, there's a reason we're being kept apart physically.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jill. This has been just very enlightening.
Well, thank you. You've enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, I think everyone has Jill's contact. So certainly if you want to follow up with her, I will send out an email with the recording of this as well. Awesome. And then for those that are interested, some of you may know Augie Popik. She's also a body talker, and she also practices Acunet and Body Intuitive. And so we're going to do a immune boost joint body talk group session next Sunday. So I'll send that information out too. And our particular focus, because we both kind of went into Mindscape with it, is with the coming of this vaccination, or the vaccination going to be happening. That is our focus on the adaptability and resilience of our immune systems in that.
The problem with that is that these vaccinations are.
So what we're not going to do, Jill, is we're actually not going to judge it at all. We're going to accept all positions on the vaccination, and we're going to do the session on that. So I respect that you have problems with it, and that's totally fine. But what we're doing is we're going to be really inclusive with it. And so anyone's perspective is welcome in the group session, because some things we just figure we'll work with what is on it. Yeah. So that will be next week.
Thank you so much for organizing this and putting it together.
Well, thank you, Jill. Yeah, it was fascinating and amazing insight. So thank you, everyone, so much.
Yes, thanks everybody.
Hopefully we'll see you all soon. And and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you again, Jill. Jill Kirby from BC. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.